Welcome everyone to an American TESOL Institute webinar. This time, top 10 tips to teach pronunciation, hosted by yours truly, Jason Levine, also known as Fluency MC. I'm proud and honored to continue doing these professional development webinars for English teachers like me around the world. We change the topic each time. We've been doing these top 10 tips to teach. If you know me, you know I like rhythm and rhyme. So of course I like alliteration. So that's a good one, isn't it? Top 10 tips to teach. So this time it's top 10 tips to teach pronunciation. Philippines is here. Azerbaijan is here. Brazil's here. Italy's here. Romania, Greece, Venezuela, Argentina. France is here. If you haven't told us in the chat, those of you who are here live, thanks so much for coming. It's great to see a big group here live. If you're watching the recording, thank you. And please share it out to your colleagues. Colombia's here. Here we go. American TESOL Institute has a Facebook group called Featured Teachers. I am often in that group to promote webinars such as this one today, and also our Featured Teachers series, where we bring in somebody in ELT, a teacher who has done great things, done good work, made great relationships with both teachers and students around the world. We have a wonderful teacher, Tiago Materia, somebody that I know quite well. I've collaborated with him. We made a song together on British American English. He's a fascinating guy with a lot of great experience to share. So May 14th, be on the lookout, join the Featured Teachers group for the link. It's already on the blog of the American TESOL Institute. So if you go to American TESOL Institute on the web or the Facebook page, you will see a blog post about Tiago. Definitely check that out, May 14th. Our first tip, top 10 tips for teaching pronunciation. Consider if, when, and how. Not or, and how, because they're different. If, when, and how to teach the phonetic alphabet, phonemic charts, IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. Why? Let's get the chat going. When might it be very useful and important? When might it not be as useful or important, or even possibly confusing or hard for students? Each letter has different sounds. Okay, that's important, sure. Depends on your student's level. We normally teach it in CSAM 6th grade. I think the level is important to consider. Oh, I like this one. Because we have bigger fish to fry. Yes. Somebody said, in my experience, it only confuses them. That's what I was also thinking about. And sometimes it's confusing because you, the teacher, need to know more about it. They certainly don't need to learn to write it. That's interesting. If they know it, and there are different ways they can learn it, it could help them, right? It's a decoding tool. It could help them when they check a word in the dictionary. It could help them really understand more of how the sound system works in English, but it could also be confusing. So if you're going to do something with it, definitely you should not be confused. Number 9, another consider if, when, and how. This time, consider if, when, and how to focus on tongue positions and mouth movement. Why? Again, what are the things to consider? I want to hear from you. Something that could be very useful for your students by focusing on tongue positions and mouth movement. Something that might not be useful or could be difficult, maybe not helpful. I've seen teachers do wonderful things focusing on the physical aspects of pronunciation. I've seen teachers do things that really make it more confusing and worse, could be demotivating. Well said, Patricia. The first step in learning pronunciation is listening to it. When you think about that, it's so basic, isn't it? You can't teach and you can't learn pronunciation when you haven't had enough exposure, and not just exposure, but learning how to listen And that gets into like bottom-up listening, top-down listening. It's much more important than the phonetic alphabet. Okay, the physical side, it's useful because some sounds don't exist in the mother tongue. So you may need to, right, help your students figure out where to put their tongue, right, where to move their mouth, and how, possibly diagrams. But what are some other ways to help them? Let's see if anybody has ideas, things you've done or you've heard about that can help with the position of the tongue and the mouth. Certain sounds come natural, but sometimes it's useful to explain it. TH, okay, so TH is a classic example, and for good reason. It doesn't exist in most languages, and it's so common in high-frequency vocabulary in English, the oldest words, right? A lot of the determiners and pronouns and high-frequency nouns and verbs. Absolutely. So if they're not catching it when they're listening, if they're confusing words because of that, and when they speak, they're not able to form it, you might need to do the tongue has to pass by, touch the teeth, or it's not going to happen. You have a presentation on listening? Great. Contact me. Maybe we can connect on those presentations. Learning the tongue positions allow us to pronounce the sounds of the alphabet correctly. Absolutely. But make sure that the students are enjoying it and understand what you're doing, because I've seen problems when you've got a chart and they're kind of struggling to figure it out. Here's an idea. You can ask them to listen and repeat, pay attention to the way we move our mouth and tongue and lips. So many great things about repetition, which we're going to get to, and this is one of them. If you're repeating and you get into, right, sort of the habit of just repeating something, you can then focus on, like Danielle is saying, where the tongue and lips are. If it's one time, right, your brain is focusing on too many things, but the repetition can really help with that. I agree. Good. What else is here about this? After learning individual sounds used in connected speech. We are going to get to connected speech quickly. I'm not surprised it's happening right now. All of these things really connect together, of course, and we're not going to separate, okay, let's work on the physical things and forget about stress, rhythm, consonant sounds, vowel sounds, right? So I'm separating these tips out, but please, they go together for sure. And we're going to get to individual sounds and connected speech shortly. The first word that comes to my mind is three. My daughter, until very recently, as a native speaker of English, was confused about tree and three. So it's not just second language speakers. Can help students with great difficulty. Yeah. So this is great because Ananda, because that reminds me, of situations where students are not necessarily having great difficulty. They just need more listening. They need more fun activities. They need more comprehensible input. But teachers are working on the mouth and where to put this and using terminology. That's another danger when you get here, talking about fricatives and bilabials and liquids and glides and all of this. Even voiced and voiceless. I've seen teachers do some great things with, voiced and voiceless, but they didn't need to do that as much as give the students enough listening that they could understand. And then the students automatically could know the difference between voiced and unvoiced. But I agree, if there is difficulty, the physical side is important. Contrasting words, if you mean minimal pairs like ship and sheep, we're going to get to that. Practice makes progress. Hey, somebody's been paying attention to my webinars. That's right. Let's go to number 8. Consider which variety or varieties of English you want to focus on. Why is this important? By this, I mean, well, traditionally, we talk a lot about British English and American English, increasingly UK English. There's Australian English, there's Canadian English, but the list doesn't stop there. With World English becoming something of its own, what do you feel is important to consider when we talk about varieties of English? What should you think about? Today, accents should be recognized. What do you mean by that? I think I know, but what do you mean by that? What's important, guys, about you as a teacher? What about your students? What are they going to need in the future? What's going to be important for them in terms of accents, English accents, in terms of, well, what accent they will have, but what about also understanding other accents? Absolutely, Englishes. There are so many different accents. And we understand, we've had two things kind of positively correlate, which is great. One is that English has been spreading more around the world. And the other is we have a deeper understanding and appreciation of varieties of English and more respect. So that's a really nice correlation, I think. Yeah, what Patricia just said is I find more and more important, and I think it's exciting. I mean, there are situations where I've heard students in business meetings telling me that, because they understood, Indian accents, a Korean person speaking English, that they did better than a British person or an American person. Now that is fascinating. ELF, English is the lingua franca. This is another webinar here too. Wonderful comments here. I'm really glad to have your participation. So we agree, I think, that we need to consider the fact that students, if they go out into the world to use English, are going to be communicating not just with native speakers of English, but people from like themselves who are using English, and exposure to other varieties is important. On the other hand, if your students are, you're preparing them for very specific situations, they may need to know a certain accent more than another. Let's move on. Identify and practice hard to make and easily confused consonant sounds. You may be able to guess what number 6 is. It's very similar. Why identify? Are consonant sounds going to be, are certain consonant sounds, whether they're, single sounds or consonant clusters, are they going to be difficult or easily confused for every language learner? Or are there going to be some that are harder for your students because of their first language, or some of your students if you have a group of mixed first languages? Also, feel free to put in your experience with your groups, which consonant sounds are sometimes confused. They can't hear the difference. They can't make the difference, or they struggle to, we mentioned TH as one. Are there any others that you have identified? And after that, it's about practice. Only if the sounds bring about a change in meaning. Consonant letters can have more than one sound, right? And we're going to get into that soon. Sound spelling relationships, that's coming up. Oops, spoiler alert. Great stuff in the comments here. One of the most basic things that was said earlier is listening comes before pronunciation. Another one is, and this relates to the accents, what's more important, that every consonant sound is perfect, sounds like a native speaker, or that they don't interfere with communication? I hope that's a rhetorical question to everybody here. I don't expect anyone here to tell me that their students, well, I certainly hope not, need to pronounce consonant sounds or vowel sounds in this certain way if they're being understood, and if they can understand what they're hearing and they can be understood. There's no interference. That's right. Communication is the goal. However, I think we know there are certain consonant sounds and consonant clusters that can make it difficult for students to understand something or for them to communicate it. Are there examples of that? Absolutely. Chunks and collocations all the way. Are there any examples in your experience? Somebody mentioned TH, P and F, okay. ED endings, important one. I want to start talking about minimal pairs. They've been mentioned, or contrasting pairs, or there are different ways to put them. What is good and what is bad about something like this if you're going to practice consonants? Minimal pairs can be good for what you're saying, not if this sounds similar. Minimal pairs isn't good for everything, but wow, there are a lot of things you can do with minimal pairs. Too mechanical, okay. Is this something you could just give your students? People mentioned games with minimal pairs. I have another activity with minimal pairs I'm going to share with you. It could be boring, right? To just do rote work with something like this. The same thing with vowel sounds. Now, in your experience, I put number 6 as vowels because I feel in terms of interference, in terms of comfort with the language, both listening and speaking, vowel sounds in English present more problems overall. Do you agree with that in your experience? I spend a lot more time with minimal pairs with vowel sounds than I do with consonants, for example. And mistakes that interfere with communication, I tend to notice more vowel issues. Certainly the classic. If TH is the classic consonant, then short I and long E is the vowel classic example of the vowel problem. It definitely depends on the student and the first language, of course. But there is something particular about English. Lots of vowel sounds. What is it, 20 out of the 44, right? I mean, we have the clusters, consonant cluster issue, but generally the consonants in English, they're not as complicated as in many other languages in the world. Vowels, on the other hand, we have a lot of diphthongs that are very common, right? And we have the difference with short, long, high, low, stressed, unstressed. We have the schwa, and that gets us more into not vowel sound practice, I feel, but more into the rhythm and the stress of words. How about who you teach? We have some examples here. And the cut and cat, yes. I had many Japanese students that would talk about the butt room, not the bathroom. It could be called the butt, well, anyway. Are there any before we move on? We'll move on, but I'll let you, if you have anything you want to share about vowel sounds and also how you help them practice vowel sounds. If it's minimal pairs, games, if you have links, you can share them. Speaking of activities for vowel sounds, I use songs. I have a song called Don't Sleep. So if you're interested, you can find it easily by doing a search for Fluency MC and the song Don't Sleep. To practice, as somebody put here, the classic long E and short I. Why are these sounds confusing? In English, the sounds I and E don't exist in most languages. Most languages have E. Now, we don't have E. So languages as different as, French and Japanese, the letter I for us is the E sound, but we don't have that sound. We have I and E. And it's really important, I think, for students to hear the difference. Smile when they pronounce it, Pietra saying E. So I have a song to practice with minimal pairs. It goes like this: fill, feel, and let's smile. Fill, feel, hill, heal, still, steal, make it ill, keep it real, sick, seek, pick, peak, chick, cheek, kick knowledge when you speak, lip, leap, whip, weep, hip, heap, ship, sheep, chip, cheap, dip, deep. It's a trip, keep your grip, don't slip, don't sleep. Sorry. I was letting someone into the room. Minimal pairs, it's got to be gamified or chantified, songified in some way, doesn't it? If it's just repeating a list of minimal pairs, that's not going to be very memorable. and it's certainly not going to be fun. Number 5, consider how to best teach sound spelling relationships. What do I mean about sound spelling relationships? Yeah, phonics is a word that comes up here for sure. After you hear a word, do you know how it's spelled? Okay, let's do a little experiment. I'm going to say these words and you shout them out. You don't have to shout them anyway, no microphones. But come, from, gum, thumb. Do they rhyme or not? Same sound or different? They do rhyme, absolutely. How about the spelling? What is the sound spelling relationship? That's why English is so fun, and that's why it's so frustrating both. Let's make it fun, not frustrating. Let's do it again, everybody. B, C, T, key. Do they rhyme? Yes, they sound the same, but they're spelled differently. So we just talked about the long E sound. There are so many spellings and homophones, right? We can see them here already. B, B-E-E, C, S-E-A, S-E-E, T, the letter T, T-E-A. There are a couple other T's too. All long E. How do you teach that? Do you teach it? They have to learn it. How will they best learn it? So that's back to this question. Consider how to best teach sound spelling relationships. Ooh, music, poetry, context. I love it. Can you or should you teach it with, okay, here are these combinations we're going to learn for the long E. You have E, E-E, E-A, E-Y, I-E, E-I. Be careful when you go under the microscope. That's not necessarily going to lead to their understanding them. Cartoons, that's good too. Here's another. Everybody, her, sir, fur, were, same sounds, very different spelling. And what about this? Everybody, so, no, go, do. Did you say do? Do? No, it's do. Well, what happened here? The words are spelled the same, but what? Do you think most students, if they have some exposure to English, are they going to say do? Do you need to teach them a rule? So, the sound is O, but the exception is after the D sound, it changes to an U. Do you need to do that? Why not? No, it's so common. What about these words? Maybe not as common, but does it have to be difficult? It's about the exposure. If it's in a song, if it's in a game, if they're repeating them, they're seeing them many times, they're hearing them, they associate the sound and the spelling. They don't think. And on the flip side, right? If you ask them to think about it, they'll get more confused. This is what I mean. If it's in a rhyme, if it's in a song, some people said songs rhyme for sound spelling. To me, this is the best way. So lock and walk sound the same to us. What about doubt? About. You can talk about silent B's. But I know many students that would talk about combing their hair. They don't say the B because they heard it. They've seen the word enough times, right? Their brain has decided there is no B sound. Doubt is the same. If you don't know the word from exposure, then you might have a problem. But if you hear it enough and see it enough, it's going to work. So songs are great for that. And you can raise awareness if you like, depending on their age and level. Let's look for the sound spelling differences, relationships, or just having them do it enough, their brain will make those connections. This brings us to number 4. Have you ever done this? recording your students and having them record themselves. If you have, I expect you to tell me that it really changed a lot for you as a teacher and them. I use Vocarutu always, the best, the easiest and the best. Flipgrid also. Why? Why is this important? I could tell you, but maybe you know and can share with us. They can listen to themselves. Yes, and what happens? Why is that important? And they might say, oh, I don't want to hear my voice on a recording. I understand that. That's part of the reason to do it. Why? They keep doing it, and what? Oh, they can work at home without feeling embarrassed. That's nice. And maybe just exchange with you without doing it in front of other students. Yes, there it is. They can figure out their own pronunciation mistakes, and you can really hear them better too and help them. That is wonderful. There's an app. Oh, if you have an app to share for this, great. I don't know many, but I expect there are now more apps for pronunciation. Now that we have better voice recognition software, people are on phones. They could do things where they could record themselves and listen. So if you know apps for recording yourself and learning from this, please share them with us. Reading along to things, definitely. Reading along, listening to yourself after if you record yourself reading along. And if it's a score that helps them or you encourage them, they can really feel their progress, right? If they do this and they continue, they will start to feel, oh, I sound better than before. Clearly explain and practice word and sentence stress. I don't think there is a bigger area in terms of interference, in terms of difficulty understanding and difficulty being understood. So we've talked about sounds that could be hard to pronounce, right? We've talked about accents, varieties of English, okay? But in most cases, tell me if it's your experience also, but certainly it's when people, students have come to me and said, you know, I don't know what happened. They didn't understand me. 9 times out of 10, it's not a TH problem or a vowel problem, sometimes vowel problems, but it's word and sentence stress. We could also call it syllable and sentence stress. I like that better, actually. I probably should have written that here because it can be confusing. English is a stress-timed language. Many languages, most languages, are syllable-timed. English is a stress-timed language. But English is a stress-timed language. What's happening to ish, is, timed, and uj, right? The meaning of a sentence is mainly expressed in the words that are stressed. Well, that's good. Meaning, sentence, mainly expressed, words stressed. That means we can listen for the stressed words and catch more of the important meaning. The flip side, the unstressed words are important to the grammar of the sentence. Now, why is this arrow here? That's a little preview of what's coming next. The unstressed words. My voice went up. That's not stress. If you call that stress, I don't think so. That's coming up. Stress is challenging to teach, someone saying. I agree if you teach it the wrong way. I'm not saying it's easy, but there are many cool things you can do, especially if you think it's hard. It could be because you're doing it with students who needed to do it earlier. So if people tell you, well, teach stress at the intermediate level or the upper, that's craziness. It needs to be taught immediately. When you learn the most basic vocabulary words, you're learning where the stress in the word is, that's syllable stress or word stress, meaning, not meaning, right? Sentence, and you're helping them, like I'm doing here, notice where it is. If they do that early, it will be much easier for you or another teacher later to help them with it. What happens to the unstressed words? They reduce in length. And what happens to the endings of some words? They link to the beginnings of others. So nobody in English would ever say, how are you doing today? They might say it fast, they might say it slow, but they will never say it like this. So when it's slow, it would be, oh, hi, how are you doing today? That's slow. How are you doing today? Fast, how you doing today? They always reduce these unstressed syllables and they or link. That's the schwa idea, the So, how are you doing today? My U is a little bit like the schwa. But when I do, how you doing today? How you, oh, there's that schwa. The most common sound in English, the reduced sound I call this shrinking and linking. You can call it, right? Reduced and connected speech, whatever you like. Did you know the basic rhythm of a sentence is 1, 2, 3? It goes back to the fact that English is a subject, verb, object, word order style language. We don't have the different cases we used to. So something happened where the rhythm became very much like this as a result of the subject, verb, and the complement. Students play music. What happens, you may have seen other teachers talk about this. I don't know if they've talked about it as the subject, verb, object. That's sort of an interesting detail about it. But when you see something like this, where we are taking the subject, verb, object, or complement, and we are adding function words, adding grammar words, what's going to happen to those grammar words? Is the rhythm going to change? So that's my question for you in the chat box. We have students play music. 1, 2, 3. When you look here, so many more syllables. Is the rhythm going to change? So if you look from the first to the last, we have how many syllables? Students play music, 5. The last one, the future perfect continuous. The students will have been playing the musics. 11 syllables. Will the rhythm change? No, it won't. And I will demonstrate. If you want to try, I will leave some space for you to repeat after me. And I will do it slow. So no one will say, well, it's because of the speed of English. No. Fast or slow, the rhythm is the same. Here it is. Students play music. The students play the music. The students are playing the music. The students have been playing the music. The students will have been playing the music. That's something very particular and interesting about English. It means when the grammar gets more advanced, it's harder to hear it. It's harder to notice it. Put it in a box. Put it in a box on the table. Are these difficult vocabulary words? Difficult grammar? No, but it could be difficult to hear and difficult to pronounce without focusing on stress. Let me see. Oh, that's cool. Let me see it. Let me see. Let me see if I can help you with your project. We can say it fast. Let me see if I can help you with your project. But even slow, it can be hard, right? Okay, well, let me see if I can help you with your project. Let me see if I can. You should have come. Slow, you should have come. Should have. That's slow. Not should have. You should have come to the party on Friday. We said the stressed words have the most meaning. That means when you listen for stress in the pronunciation, for fluency, so you understand. Fluent listening is not listening for everything. But Of course, when we speak, we need grammar. We need those little words. So we need to notice that for writing and for speaking. Number two, a few minutes ago, I said I had a little picture of an arrow going this way. I said we need to listen to the stressed words for fluency, but we need to pay attention to the unstressed words. It's not unstressed, I said. It was unstressed. There's something different. It's not about stress. It's about what? Intonation. Number two and number three are so important. Number three, stress. Why? I said, I think, and it seems like some people are agreeing, most of the problems with communication are a result of word stress or sentence stress. Well, what about intonation? It could be misunderstanding of the message, but more likely it's a misinterpretation of the person's feelings, or both. What do you feel about intonation? If you have comments, put them in. I'm going to keep going because I want to make sure there's time for everything today. Is shrinking and linking connected speech? The stress and connected speech, is it informal English? Is it bad English? Is it impolite? Or is it just the rhythm? Okay, now I want everybody to participate here. Which of these sentences is more polite? Permission, modal verbs. Which of these sentences is more polite? Oh, I think Daniela might suspect it's a trick question. Now, if it's in writing, I definitely agree may is more polite, but how about speaking? Is may always more polite when you speak? Let's do a little test here. I'm going to say the first sentence. Hi, can I borrow your pen? Excuse me, can I borrow your pen? Sentence two, may I borrow your pen? Hi, may I borrow your pen? Do you still believe may is always more polite? It depends on the intonation. We tell kids, and we tell a lot of people learning English, or kids whose first language is English, to use may. Do you know why we tell them to use may? It's not just because of writing. It's because kids don't use intonation this way when they're young. So they'll go to your friend's house and say, can I use the bathroom? So it's better for them to say, may I use the bathroom? Because they haven't learned yet. Now, if they go there and they say, can I use the bathroom? We're going to talk about that intonation pattern. It's okay. Does the rhythm change? If you're confused, what is stress and what is intonation, this is really important. The rhythm doesn't change with politeness. So it can be, can I borrow your pen? May I borrow your pen? It's not a difference in rhythm. It's not stress that changes the feeling. It's the up and the down. It's the intonation. In the first example, right, this is my very primitive image of high intonation going up for a yes or no question. So I'm a man, but listen to me. Can I borrow your pen? I'm being very polite. Or, excuse me, but I was wondering, can I borrow your car next weekend? I'm being very formal and polite. It's high going up because it's yes, no question. But notice, if it's my friend, hey man, can I borrow your pen? Hey, how's it going? What are you doing tonight? Yeah? All right, you want to meet up later? Okay, cool, all right. Flat, why? Why is it flat? Now, I don't want you to get confused. Many times we say, may I borrow your pen? This is just my example. But if I'm saying to my friend, hey, can I come over? Okay, all right, well, could you call me later? I know my friend. I don't need the intonation to show, right? We're cool, right? But if it's somebody in a store, if it's my boss, right? So intonation, hugely important when it's different in the first language, or it doesn't exist in the same way. So I could say to my friend, hey man, what are you going to do on Friday? Right? Or I can say to my boss, so what are you going to do on Friday? The rhythm's not changing. What's changing is the up and down. We don't alter the rhythm. We don't change the stress to express our feelings, our emotions, our attitude. We do this through intonation. And especially what? What is the intonation that is so important to use? Formal or polite people we don't know, we tend to speak with a high tone. I did this sort of more inductively. I've given you the examples over and over again. Here it is, right? So the difference is, for my boss, how are you doing today? Now it's falling intonation because it's not a yes/no question. Oh, hello. How are you doing today? How about my friend? Amen. How you doing today? Flat going down, not high going down. And often faster. How you doing today? Hey man, how you doing today? Faster with lower intonation. So what I think, what I hope you can get from this is that the flat, being comfortable, friends, that can be later, okay? First job here for most students is getting this high intonation, either going up for yes/no questions, down for WH questions and most statements. Number one, follow the 3 R's. Relax, repeat, remember. Everything we've talked about here, we've talked about practice, and practice is repetition. Relax, I mean have fun also. Not be stressed out about where to put the mouth, right? Not to feel I have to learn the phonetic symbols for all these things. If it's going to stress students out, either don't do it or they're not ready for it. Right? The repetition, all of this is what's going to help them remember both the muscle memory of pronunciation, right? And especially things like sound spelling relationships. We talked about this word stress and sentence stress and intonation. But there are certainly things you can do that are not just, okay, let's just get exposure. You can focus on things like doing a dictogloss where you dictate, what did you do over the weekend? Students try to write it down. They compare, they reconstruct the sentences, and then they practice them with you. How did the meeting go yesterday? You can say it politely or more informally. So how did the meeting go yesterday? The song I showed you earlier when we were talking, this is one of my songs, The Right Chemistry, where you're talking about sound spelling relationships. You can also do stress. Where is the stress? I'm going to do it for you. One afternoon on a walk, he met this woman, their eyes locked. Or if you say it, there's a little bit more. One afternoon on a walk, he met this woman, their eyes locked. His world was rocked. He gave her his number. Ooh, where is that stress? You can have the students, right, mark it, or you can give an example, something like this, until they start to get it a bit, and then have them mark stress. One afternoon on a walk, he met this woman, their eyes locked. Studying English, practicing English, and using English. If you are teaching pronunciation and it's too much studying, I'm not against phonetic alphabet. I'm not against talking about studying the parts of the mouth. But be careful. There needs to be a lot of practice, like we've talked about, so that when they're using English, it's easier for them, their pronunciation, to communicate. We're not going to get them up here until they do enough repetition to remember here. Practice builds accuracy. So when we practice, we do repetition with sounds, with minimal pairs, right? We do a lot of, I don't like to call it drilling, not drilling, but fun activities, games, songs with repetition. We're more accurate. Your learners can speak more clearly. People will understand them. They're more confident. Then they will speak with greater fluency. And practice makes. I like to end this way. I usually get the traditional one, but some of you know my new take on it. Practice makes perfect. Or what? I like perfect if you mean perfect as the accuracy, more accurate. But I like to say, because perfect can sometimes stress us out as teachers and students, I have to speak perfectly, so I'm not going to speak. That practice makes progress.
Hello.
Hello. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Please join us in the Featured Teachers group on Facebook to get updates on future webinars. And thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. There'll be more.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye, Jason.